Imagine a nation striving for progress, but also grappling with how to integrate its most unique communities without, erasing their ancient ways. When India became independent, one of the biggest questions was, how do we govern our tribal communities? It really wasn't a simple answer. And the debates that shaped policy back then, well, they've continued to resonate for decades. In this deep dive, we're going to unpack some of those key philosophical debates, the constitutional provisions, and crucially, the real-world challenges that define tribal administration in India. We'll be looking at parliamentary reports, academic insights, and powerful case studies just to help you understand this complex, very crucial aspect of modern India.
And what's really fascinating here is that the groundwork, the foundation for these discussions, it was actually laid even before independence under British rule.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the British government, through acts like the Government of India Act of 1919 and 1935, they'd already created what they called backward tracts, or excluded and partially excluded areas. The Governor-General had significant power here, supposedly to protect tribes from outsiders, but also, kind of paradoxically, to civilize them, which immediately makes you wonder, beyond those stated aims, what were the true intentions behind separating these areas?
That's a powerful question to start with. You might initially think, okay, it was purely for protection, right?
Well, on the surface, yes. The British claimed it was about safeguarding tribal cultures. They even suggested, Indian rulers might impose their own ways or that tribes weren't developed enough for complex government systems.
Standard colonial arguments, then.
Pretty much. But if you dig a little deeper into the sources, you find a more, let's say, pragmatic picture. The real intention often leaned towards converting tribes into tax-paying citizens.
The economics.
Always. This was often done by isolating areas that resisted becoming laborers and then introducing Christian missionaries. The idea was to change their traditional value systems, make them more open to modern European values, and eventually to British taxation.
So a history of isolation, yes, but with these really clear underlying economic and cultural motives.
Exactly.
And after independence, India faced this huge choice. Continue that isolation or push for full integration, which brought about this fundamental clash, the Guria-Elwin Debate.
Precisely. On one side, you had Guria-Elwin. He championed what you could call an isolationist approach. He actually proposed a national park concept.
A national park for people.
Kind of. Envisioned protected zones under a tribal commissioner. His idea was minimal contact with outsiders, no missionaries allowed, permits needed for any settlements or businesses.
Okay.
Elwin really believed development should be internal. He talked about contextual or need-based education and capacity building, not just imposing outside ideas.
What did he mean by contextual education? That sounds interesting.
It was quite forward-thinking, actually. It wasn't about a standard curriculum. It could mean, say, teaching math using traditional counting methods the tribes already knew, or tailoring job skills to things like forest-produced collection stuff directly relevant to their lives.
Makes sense.
He even categorized tribes into 4 classes. Class 1 was pure and pristine, untouched. Class 4 was the elite minorities who'd managed to integrate elements without losing their identity. His goal was for Class 1 and 2 to jump straight to Class 4, avoiding the exploitation of Class 3.
Skipping the messy middle bit.
Right. He famously warned the horn of Motor would sound the death knell of Aboriginal tribes. He wanted them trained and empowered first, proud of their heritage before major outside contact.
A very protective vision. So how did G.S. Guria's counter-argument, assimilation, differ?
Guria was completely against isolation. He argued, look, unlike the U.S. or Australia, tribes and non-tribes in India had lived side by side, mostly peacefully, for centuries before the British messed things up.
Okay, a different historical read.
Yeah. He said exploitation wasn't just a tribal thing. It was pan-India under colonial rule. Everyone suffered. Guria believed tribal backwardness wasn't due to contact itself, but what he called imperfect assimilation.
Imperfect assimilation.
He essentially saw some marginalized tribes as backward Hindus. Their problems weren't unique because they were tribal, but because they were imperfectly integrated into the larger society, facing similar issues to other marginalized groups. So his solution was perfect assimilation, complete integration, but with protections against exploitation.
So for you listening, this really poses a deep question. Can a community truly integrate without losing its unique identity, its values? That was the massive dilemma for newly independent India. How did Nehru handle these two powerful, opposing views?
Well, Nehru drew heavily on Elwin's ideas. Elwin was his tribal advisor, after all. He came up with the policy of integration, often called tribal Panchayat.
Panchayat, the five principles.
Exactly. It was basically a middle path. Allow tribes to develop along the line of their own genius, nothing imposed, but simultaneously help them join the mainstream.
Trying to get the best of both worlds.
Right. Nehru rejected isolation. He found it insulting, like treating people as museum artifacts, and frankly, impossible in a globalizing world. It would just breed alienation.
Makes sense.
But he also rejected forced assimilation. He feared an identity crisis, tribes becoming second-grade copies of ourselves, and he worried about a resource crisis, unchecked integration, leading to massive exploitation of their lands. So his policy was sort of building on Elwin's preparation idea, but framing it as integration, not isolation.
So this tribal panchayat became the guiding spirit. What were those five core principles, specifically?
Okay, they aim to balance protection with real progress. 1. Develop along their own genius. Really recognize indigenous wisdom. Let development come from within their culture. A big shift from the colonial civilizing idea.
Right.
2. Respect land and forest rights. Secure their traditional claims. Keep outsiders from just coming in and exploiting resources vital to their life and identity.
Crucial.
3. Train their own people. Empower tribals for admin, professional work in their own areas. Build internal capacity. Reduce reliance on outsiders.
Self-efficiency.
4. Work through traditional institutions. Don't over-administer with endless external schemes. Empower their own local bodies with real legislative and financial power. Bottom-up governance.
Okay.
And 5, judge results by character, not just cash. Progress isn't just money spent or stats. It's about qualitative well-being, satisfaction, trust. Are people actually happy?
That last one feels particularly important and probably hard to measure.
Very. And to gauge the success of this whole integration thing, B.K. Roy Berman introduced this really useful concept, the buffer zone.
Okay, tell us about the buffer zone.
Think of it like an ecotone in nature, where two ecosystems meet and blend.
Yeah.
Here, it's where tribal and non-tribal cultures interact. The ideal outcome of integration is a harmonious buffer zone.
Yeah.
Mutual learning, mutual respect, no one feels threatened or forced to give up their dignity.
A healthy interaction.
Exactly. But if you see conflict, coercion, the dominant culture trying to suppress the other, well, that signals the policy's failing. Roy Berman also pointed out that historically, tribes often chose to live on the margins as buffer communities, maintaining autonomy. It wasn't always imposed, so it's a great tool to ask, is integration actually working as intended?
Okay, so with these guiding principles, India set up constitutional provisions. Let's start with the fifth schedule. That covers a large part of tribal India outside the Northeast, right?
That's correct. Article 244 empowers the president, after consulting the state governor, to declare an area scheduled. Historically, it was often just relabeling the old British excluded areas.
So same areas, new name.
Largely, yes. Which raises the question, is just changing the name enough? Or do you need real administrative change on the ground? Currently, 10 states have fifth schedule areas, mostly central India. Places like Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, MP, Jharkhand, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Odisha, Himachal.
Got it. And what criteria were actually set up to decide if an area should be scheduled?
The Debar Commission laid out 4 main ones. First, a large tribal population, ideally a majority.
Okay.
Second, a compact, reasonably sized area, not a whole state, not just one village, but something manageable for special administration.
Right.
Third, the area itself should be economically underdeveloped, poor infrastructure, etc. The idea was to target areas needing special protection.
And fourth.
The poor economic standard of the tribal people living there, but, these criteria remained pretty subjective.
How so?
Well, the Puri Commission tried to make them more precise later, but it didn't really work out. Madhya Pradesh suggested maybe a 40% tribal population threshold. Rajasthan suggested things like female illiteracy rates or lack of safe drinking water, but no specific percentages were agreed upon, so it often came down to government discretion.
I see. So how are these fifth schedule areas actually managed? What about the tribal advisory councils and the governors?
Okay, the Constitution mandates a tribal advisory council, or TAC, in these states. Max 20 members, 3/4 must be scheduled tribe representatives from the state legislature.
And their role?
Purely advisory. They advise the governor on tribal welfare issues that the governor refers to them. They can't just take things up themselves.
Limited scope, then.
Very. The governor, though, has significant special powers on paper. They have to submit an annual report to the president on how things are going in the scheduled areas. Protests, crime, admin progress. Based on that, the union government can issue directives to the state.
Okay.
And crucially, the governor can say, look, this state or central law won't apply here, or it'll apply with changes, especially for things like land transfer, forest use, money lending, mining licenses that affect tribes. But this needs TAC consultation and the president's final okay.
So the framework seems quite strong, potentially protective. But did it actually work? What did those committees, Guria and Kaka, find about implementation?
Yeah, this is where the gap between paper and reality really shows up. Both committees found serious problems, governor's reports, often late or haphazardly constructed, more like political PR than objective analysis. Oh yeah. One shocking example was a Harkhand governor's report with basic errors, like the dates hadn't been changed over several years. Shows a real lack of care. They also tend to focus on money spent, not actual well-being.
Wow.
Plus, governors rarely use their independent discretionary powers. They usually just act on the advice of the state ministers, even though the Supreme Court says they can act independently here. Someone famously said the governor is like Hanumanji, who has forgotten his power.
Needs reminding of their strengths.
Exactly. And the center rarely steps in with directives either. One rare case was in 2012, the Union Tribal Affairs Minister directly told the Andhra Pradesh governor to cancel some mining MOUs exploiting tribes. But that was an exception.
And the tribal advisory councils, you said their scope was limited?
They're often called a toothless tiger. Advisory only, no power to enforce advice, can only discuss what the governor gives them. Plus, that remaining 1/4 of members, no clear criteria. Usually political appointees who favor the government, making the TAC less accountable to the tribes themselves.
So facing all these issues, what did experts, like the Kaka Committee, propose to actually strengthen the fifth schedule?
They had some key recommendations. First, a big shift. They said no state or central law should apply in fifth schedule areas unless the governor explicitly approves it based on TAC advice. That's aiming for real autonomy.
That would be huge.
Definitely. Second, restructure the TAC for much stronger grassroots tribal representation, include elected Panchayat members, not just state MLAs.
Makes sense.
Third, ensure governors submit timely, meaningful reports detailing actual actions taken on central directives. Accountability.
Right.
Fourth, extend the fifth schedule to other states with significant tribal populations like Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu.
Expand its reach.
And finally, empower the TAC to take up issues suo moto on its own initiative, and require the governor to publicly explain why they accept, modify, or reject TAC advice. Make the whole process more transparent and accountable.
Okay, so that's the fifth schedule. Then came the PESA Act in 1996. That was another big move towards decentralization, wasn't it? What was its main aim?
PESA, the Panchayat's Extension to Scheduled Areas Act. Yes, huge potential. The goal was to extend the Panchayati Raj system, village councils, to the fifth schedule areas. But crucially, to empower the Gram Sabhas, the actual village assemblies, as bodies of self-governance.
Giving power directly to the village assembly.
Exactly. It was seen as a landmark provision. It recognized traditional political systems and aimed to preserve them. It gave Gram Sabhas significant power over land, forests, money lending, alcohol sales, minor forest produce. Importantly, their prior recommendation was needed for mining licenses for minor minerals, and they got a right to a share in royalties. The idea was to protect their traditional way of life, let them lead development.
That sounds incredibly progressive. A real shift towards self-determination. Again, the big question, how did it actually play out on the ground? Did it truly empower the Gram Sabhas?
Unfortunately, PESA also ran into major implementation problems. The Kaka Committee highlighted these too. Well, first, the definition of village got diluted. PESA said a village is a hamlet or group of hamlets managing its affairs by tradition. Pretty clear, right?
Seems so.
But states like Odisha changed it, defining a village by population size maybe 2,000 to 10,000 people. Many small tribal hamlets just don't meet that. So multiple hamlets, often with mixed populations, got lumped into one village. Result: tribals often became a minority in their own supposed Gram Sabha, undermining their power.
Undercutting the whole point.
Exactly. Second, non-recognition of traditional leaders. PESA stressed respecting traditional systems, but states often sideline traditional leaders, favoring elected sarpanch who might be urban-bred, politically connected, and totally disconnected from local tribal issues, again, violating the spirit of PESA.
Okay, what else?
Third, ignored consent. PESA mandates Gram Sabha consultation for land acquisition or displacement, but this is frequently overridden or ignored. Examples are grim. Andhra's Polavaram Dam project. Only landowners consulted, not the whole Gram Sabha, Odisha's SSL mining project. Bureaucrats apparently told Gram Sabhas they had no right to refuse land acquisition, which is just false under PESA.
Wow.
And a really bad case was the Mahan coal block in Madhya Pradesh. A company allegedly forced signatures from 11,000 people, maybe bribing them with money disguised as a Kisan Mela grant, and then claimed that was Gram Sabha consent for land transfer. Just blatant fraud.
That's appalling.
Yeah.
Were there any times, though, where PESA actually worked as intended, where it protected rights?
Absolutely. The Niyamgiri case in Odisha is the shining example, a real landmark.
Tell us about that.
In 2013, the Supreme Court, interpreting PESA Section 4D, clearly affirmed the Gram Sabha's ultimate authority to reject mining projects. The Dongria Khan tribe considers Niyamgiri Mountains sacred. They believe its bauxite ore acts like a sponge, keeping their streams flowing year-round.
Okay.
They argued mining would dry up streams and the red mud waste would poison their land and water. They unanimously voted no to Vedanta's bauxite mining plan.
And the court upheld it.
Yes. It showed how traditional knowledge, even framed religiously, holds real ecological wisdom. The Supreme Court backed the Gram Sabha's right, shut down the project, restored their control. A massive victory for PESA and self-determination.
That's incredible, a real counterpoint to the failures. What other systemic issues did PESA face, and what were the suggestions for improvement?
A big one is just the lack of coordination between central ministries, Panchayat Raj, tribal affairs, environment, and forest. They all deal with tribal issues, but often work in silos, leading to confusion and conflict.
Bureaucratic hurdles.
You got it. The Kaka Committee recommended 1. Train and sensitize bureaucrats about PESA and tribal culture. Make them understand the spirit, not just rules.
Right.
2. Force states to align their rules with PESA, especially that village definition.
Crucial.
3. Government officials must actively protect tribal land, not act as brokers for companies.
That's a good mindset.
4. Impose real penalties for getting consent fraudulently. Make it risky. And the Manjakar Committee added, make empowering Gram Sabhas the absolute top priority. Treat their power as sacrosanct, inviolable, and insist on a participatory approach. Nothing happens without genuine tribal consent.
Okay, so these implementation gaps, these historical injustices, they've obviously created deep dissatisfaction, which brings us, unfortunately, to another critical dimension, the overlap with left-wing extremism or Naxalism. Why are tribal areas so often the epicenter of LWE?
Well, LWE aims to overthrow the state through revolution. It naturally targets and tries to enlist support of the most deprived, exploited sections of society.
And that often means tribal communities.
Tragically, yes, they are often the most dissatisfied with the state, feeling either abandoned or actively harmed. The stats bear this out. 6 out of 9 states significantly hit by LWE have 5th scheduled districts. Over 30 of the 38 really affected districts have large tribal populations.
Correlation is stark.
It really is. Which forces us to ask, what specific grievances make these communities such a primary target for LWE recruitment and activity?
What are those key factors?
It's a grim list. 1. Land-related factors. Widespread illegal land alienation, often with state machinery allegedly helping corporates. Think Pathalgati movements, the land bank concept.
Right.
2. Development-induced displacement. Huge projects, dams, mines frequently displace tribals. LP Vidyarthi called them industrial refugees, basically stateless in their own land.
Heartbreaking.
3. Livelihood factors. Displacement means job loss, food insecurity, pushing families into poverty traps that span generations.
It's a vicious cycle.
4. Social exclusion. Tribals often face treatment like lower castes, untouchability, bonded labor, discrimination, even trafficking.
It's just compounding the injustice.
And 5. Governance factors. Despite all the laws we've discussed, poor implementation means promises of protection remain just that, promises. Justice feels out of reach.
So it's a perfect storm of grievances.
Pretty much. And interestingly, one scholar, Girish Kanth Pandey, found many Naxal recruits aren't necessarily driven by deep ideology. They join for the uniform and weapon. It offers a sense of power, and for the jobless and landless, it's tragically seen as a source of opportunity, of employment. It really highlights the two India's reality, one progressing, one left so far behind that extremism looks like an option.
That's a sobering thought. Given these deep roots, how is the government generally trying to tackle LWE?
The Second Administrative Reforms Commission, the ARC, identified 3 common government perspectives. First, view LWE purely as a national security problem. Solution: military force, but that often just alienates people further, destroys trust.
Right.
Second, see it purely as a lack of development issue. Solution, economic development, but you can't have development without basic security and trust.
Chicken and egg.
Kind of. Third, a mix of the first two. Security operations plus development projects. That's broadly the current approach. But the second ARC argued strongly for a crucial fourth perspective. It said the state must explicitly acknowledge its failure. Acknowledge how laws were subverted by government and corporates to grab tribal resources.
Law of self-acknowledgement.
Yes, and that any real solution has to start with confidence-building measures and redressal of past wrongs to rebuild that fundamental trust. Which really makes you think, how can a state genuinely apologize and make amends for historical injustice to build new trust? It's a massive challenge.
A chilling example of an initiative that went horribly wrong, destroying trust, was Salwa Judum. What was that?
Salwa Judum means Brotherhood for Peace, ironically. It was a state-backed civilian militia set up in Chhattisgarh around 2005. Led by a Congress leader, Mahendra Karma, the idea was to counter Naxals.
How?
By arming tribal youth, some as young as 15 or 16, with rifles. Basically pitting tribal against tribal.
Oh, no.
The results were horrific. Widespread atrocities, looting, arson, villages burned, girls raped, innocent tribals killed just on suspicion of being Naxal supporters. Around 45,000 people were displaced in just 1 year.
Devastating.
The Supreme Court eventually declared it unconstitutional in 2011, recognizing the brutality. And tragically, Mahendra Karma himself was later attacked and brutally killed by Naxals in 2013, reportedly stabbed 78 times. A truly vicious cycle of violence.
Just awful. Given these painful lessons, what are the recommendations for a better path forward? One that actually addresses LWE by helping the people.
The CACA Committee again offered vital pointers. First, foster empowered citizenry and participatory self-governance. Put real power in the hands of the people, make democracy meaningful for them.
Bottom up again.
Yes. Second, ensure tribals get a due share in socioeconomic progress, inclusive development that actually benefits them. They cited Brazil's model. Land for projects is leased, not bought outright. Tribes get regular income and the land comes back after use. Much better than a one-off, often unfair compensation payment.
That sounds much more sustainable.
It does. And third, vigorously protect land and forest rights. These are fundamental to tribal existence, identity, culture, livelihood, the bedrock. These measures aim to tackle the root causes of alienation, build justice, and hopefully prevent further radicalization.
So after this deep dive, what does this all mean for you listening in? We've journeyed through some really complex territory from those foundational debates. Elwin versus Guria.
Right, isolation versus assimilation, which led to Nehru's integration policy, the tribal panchayat, trying to find that middle way.
Then the constitutional tools, the fifth schedule, PESA, designed to protect and empower, but facing huge implementation challenges on the ground.
Exactly. The governor's reports often lacking, the TAC being a toothless tiger, PESA rules getting diluted, consent being ignored, though we did see the Niyamgiri success story.
True. And all these gaps, these failures, creating the conditions where left-wing extremism can tragically take root, leading to devastating initiatives like Salwa Judum.
Which underscores the need for acknowledging state failures and focusing on trust-building, participatory governance, and genuinely shared progress, as the committees recommended.
It's clear that balancing tradition and progress for India's tribal communities isn't just some administrative issue. It's absolutely crucial for the nation's real development, its democratic health.
And connecting it to the bigger picture, it really shows that true national progress isn't just about GDP growth or uniform rules. It's about respecting diverse cultures, ensuring self-determination, building genuine trust through consistent action, through accountability.
Absolutely.
Which leaves us and you with a really powerful question to think about. How can any society ensure that the benefits of progress reach all its citizens, especially the most vulnerable, without forcing them to compromise their unique heritage, their way of life?
A powerful thought indeed. This has been a deep dive into a critical, often overlooked